It was a warm evening in the quiet suburb of Fairmont Hills, a place where the lawns stretched wide and the gates were taller than most men. Beyond one of those gates stood a mansion that carried with it not only architectural beauty, but also the story of a man's rise from struggle to success. His name was Marcus Ellison, a black CEO who had built a multimillion-dollar technology empire from the ground up. To his neighbors, he was the man with the sleek black cars and the guarded estate. To his employees, he was the visionary who gave second chances and believed in talent more than pedigree. To his family, he was simply a man who had worked relentlessly so they would never feel the weight of the struggles he once knew. That evening, Marcus was returning home from a business trip. The sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, and the hum of his car's engine echoed down the road. He pulled up to the security gate that separated the outside world from his sanctuary. Expecting a familiar nod from the guards, he paid generously to protect his home. Instead, he was met with suspicion. A guard, unfamiliar to Marcus, stepped forward and raised a hand. "Sir, this property is private. You can't enter." Marcus paused, slightly confused, but calm. "Yes, I know. This is my property. My home is right there." He pointed beyond the gate, to the mansion he had poured years of effort into. The guard looked him up and down, his eyes narrowing. "You'll need to step back. Residents only. This isn't a place for visitors." Marcus's chest tightened. Not from anger yet, but from disbelief. He had worked tirelessly so that his children would grow up without hearing words like that, without being questioned about where they belonged. And yet, here he was, standing at the gate of his own home, treated like an intruder. Another guard emerged, this one more familiar with Marcus's face but not quick enough to intervene. The first guard continued, his tone sharper, almost accusatory. "Look, I don't know how you got here, but unless you can prove you live here, you're not getting through." Marcus took a deep breath. He could feel the sting of humiliation pressing against his pride. His car, his tailored suit, his commanding presence. None of it mattered in that moment. All the guard saw was a black man at the gate of a mansion, and that image didn't fit the guard's assumptions of ownership. This wasn't just about inconvenience. This was about dignity, about being questioned in front of neighbors who might be watching from their balconies, about the echoes of a history that had long tried to tell black men where they didn't belong. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. Moments later, his wife appeared at the door of the mansion, her voice firm and commanding as she shouted across the driveway, "That's my husband. Let him in immediately." The guards exchanged nervous glances. The air shifted. Suddenly, the man they had treated with suspicion was confirmed as the very person whose name was on their paychecks. Their apologies tumbled out, but the damage had already been done. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His silence was heavy, deliberate, a silence that demanded accountability. When the gate finally opened, he drove through slowly, his eyes never leaving the guards. Behind that calm expression, though, his thoughts were racing. This wasn't just about him. It was about every black professional who had ever been second-guessed, every homeowner who had been asked if they really lived there, every success story tarnished by the shadow of doubt. Marcus knew he had a decision to make, not just for himself but for the message it would send. That night, as he sat in his study, the weight of the incident pressed heavily on him. His success was supposed to shield him from moments like this, but success had never been armor against prejudice. He thought about his son, barely 13, who was beginning to look like a man. What would happen if one day that boy came home alone and was told by a guard that he didn't belong? Would he be humiliated or worse, threatened? The thought was unbearable. And so, with a calm resolve, Marcus picked up his phone again, not to complain, not to argue, but to act. Within minutes, he had arranged an emergency meeting with the head of the security company. The tone of his voice left no room for negotiation. By morning, the story was already spreading quietly through the neighborhood. The black CEO who had been blocked from entering his own home was not going to let it slide. Neighbors whispered, curious about what he would do next. Some sympathized, others tried to minimize the situation. But Marcus knew this wasn't about gossip. It was about principle. When the sun rose, the same guards returned to their post, unaware that their time at that gate was about to end. They had failed not just in their duty to protect, but in their responsibility to respect. Marcus Ellison, the man who had built an empire brick by brick, wasn't going to let anyone, guard, neighbor, or stranger, strip him of the dignity he had earned. The following morning, Marcus walked down his marble staircase with deliberate steps. The house was quiet, but his mind was anything but. He replayed the scene from the night before again and again. The dismissive tone, the piercing suspicion, the sting of being treated as if he did not belong in the very place he had worked so hard to claim. His wife joined him at the breakfast table, her hand gently resting on his. "You know what you have to do," she whispered. Marcus nodded. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point to those guards. It was about principle, about refusing to accept a reality where his very existence in his own home could be questioned. He had built his empire on discipline and fairness, and today would be no different. By noon, the head of the security company arrived at the mansion with a hurried pace. His tie slightly askew, his expression tight. He already knew what this was about. Marcus invited him inside, his voice calm but unwavering. "Your men stood in front of me last night and denied me entry to my own home. They didn't see a homeowner. They didn't see a CEO. They saw a black man who, in their minds, couldn't possibly belong here." The executive tried to interrupt with an apology, but Marcus raised a hand to stop him. "Don't. Apologies are cheap. Dignity is priceless. I trusted your company to protect my family, not to humiliate me at the gates of my own house." Outside, the guards continued their routine, unaware of the meeting taking place inside. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes steady. "Every single guard on my property is dismissed, effective immediately. I won't tolerate an environment where respect is negotiable. Replace them, or I'll find a company that understands the value of respect as much as security." The weight of his words settled heavily in the room. The executive nodded, his face pale. He knew there was no argument to be made. Within the hour, replacements were being arranged, and the men who had failed Marcus so profoundly were informed of their dismissal. As the guards were escorted off the property, some hung their heads in silence, others muttered quiet apologies. But Marcus didn't watch them leave with bitterness. Instead, he stood tall, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze firm. This wasn't about destroying them. It was about drawing a line in the sand. A line that said, dignity is not optional. Word of the incident spread quickly beyond the neighborhood. Within days, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into headlines. Black CEO blocked at his own gate. The story carried weight because it was more than just an isolated incident. It was a reflection of countless experiences that too often went unspoken, moments when Black professionals, no matter how successful, were forced to justify their place in spaces they had rightfully earned. For Marcus, the incident became a catalyst. He was not interested in pity, nor in outrage that fizzled with the next day's news cycle. He wanted change. He wanted conversations that reached beyond his mansion gates and into boardrooms, classrooms, and neighborhoods. In an interview that followed, Marcus spoke with the same calm authority he had shown during that morning meeting. "I'm not angry for myself," he said. "I'm disappointed for the countless young men and women who will face similar moments, who will be doubted or disrespected in places they have every right to stand. My message is simple. Success doesn't shield us from prejudice, but it gives us a platform to fight it, and I will use mine." His words resonated deeply. Parents used the story to teach their children about resilience and pride. Professionals found strength in his refusal to accept humiliation in silence. And communities were reminded once more that progress wasn't just about financial success. It was about dignity, justice, and courage in the face of disrespect. One evening, as Marcus sat on his patio overlooking the city skyline, his son joined him. The boy was quiet at first, then asked, "Dad, why didn't they believe you lived here?" The question carried both innocence and the weight of generations. Marcus sighed, his hand resting on his son's shoulder. "Because sometimes People let the color of our skin blind them to who we are. But what matters is how we respond. We don't bow our heads. We don't shrink. We stand tall and remind them that our worth is not up for debate. The boy nodded slowly, his young face hardening with the understanding of a truth he wished he didn't have to learn so soon. But in that moment, Marcus knew his decision had not just been about himself. It had been about the world his children would inherit. The new guards arrived days later. This time, Marcus made it a point to meet each of them personally. He looked them in the eyes and said, "You are not just here to protect this property. You are here to respect the people who live within it. My family deserves nothing less." The message was clear. Respect was not negotiable. In the weeks that followed, life at the mansion returned to normal, but the lesson lingered. The gates no longer felt like barriers of suspicion but symbols of protection, and more importantly, of dignity preserved. Marcus knew the incident would not be the last challenge he faced as a black man in America, but it was a reminder of something he had always believed. True power lies not in wealth, but in the courage to demand respect where it is due. And so, the story of Marcus Ellison did not end with humiliation at a gate. It ended with a man standing taller than ever before, his family watching, his community listening, and a nation reminded that success without dignity is no victory at all. Marcus Ellison's story did not close with humiliation at his own gate. It ended with a man reclaiming his dignity, refusing to shrink, and sending a message to all who watched that no amount of success erases the need to demand respect, and no prejudice is strong enough to diminish a proud spirit. His decision to fire the entire security team was not about anger. It was about drawing a line, about saying to his family, his community, and to the world, "We belong everywhere our hard work has brought us." And as he stood before his mansion with his son at his side, Marcus knew he had done more than protect his home. He had protected a principle that echoes far beyond those gates. Our dignity is not up for debate. If the story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, talk about it, and let it remind you to stand tall in the face of disrespect. For more powerful true stories of Black life, resilience, and justice, subscribe to this channel and join us in keeping these voices heard, because silence protects no one, but our stories, they change everything.